So welcome to this first session on working 9 to 5, productivity, mental health and leadership in the new age of work. And it really has been a new age of work over the last year, with everyone who can being either encouraged or mandated to work from home 100% of the time. Zoom has become a household name. We've seen into each other's homes, and our kids and pets have become regular participants in our work calls. But as we begin to emerge from the world's biggest enforced remote working experiment, perceptions and expectations have changed. In a recent study of 1,000 workers conducted by OnePoll, 75% said they would be willing to take a pay cut for a job that allowed them to work remotely. In another study, 41% of respondents said that they would resign from a job that forced them to work full-time from the office. Despite this support for remote and flexible working arrangements, we know that there have been some challenges, issues with isolation and mental health, inadequate home working environments, difficulty integrating new employees, management and leadership challenges, to name but a few. In this session, we're going to explore some of these issues and how the future of work may look. So who better to help me with this than Sarah Nelson, Senior Director of HR for EMEA here at Citrix. So welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, John. Good to be here.
Great. Okay, so perhaps you could start, Sarah, by giving us a sense of the scale of the challenge that Citrix has faced.
Absolutely. And it's great to be here today, and thank you for inviting me to the session. So let me give you some context, John, about Citrix today, because I'm aware that some of the people here today may not know our company quite as well as you do. So there are about 9,000 employees worldwide within Citrix, and about 20% of that headcount is based in EMEA. So that's a small percentage. However, about 23 countries, that's about half of our countries, are based in EMEA. And our population is primarily made up of sales, engineering, product, tech, and customer support profiles. So pre-COVID, if we sort of move back in time a little, about 60% of our employees were already working partly remotely. And then, of course, like everybody else, from mid-March, we had to face the big challenge of then moving all of our employees to a fully remotely based workforce. So we had some good levers that allowed us to do that. One is our culture. So with having, our sales force out and about with our clients primarily. And our culture also is very much a culture where we can work anywhere, anytime, given some of the technology that we sell. We apply that to ourselves also. So it may have been slightly easier for us to pick up that challenge than for some of the people and the organizations on this call. And we were able to, within a few days, move our employees fully remotely. However, it's still a big shift, obviously, and I'm sure some of the people on that call can witness that it was a major revolution to physically and technologically move everybody to a full-time remote working rhythm within a very short space of time. And we're going to talk more about some of those challenges and what we did and the lessons learned as we move on.
Okay, great. So revolution indeed, Sarah. So thanks for setting the context there. So just in terms of this discussion, we're going to kind of structure this into sort of three parts. So this first section, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the challenges with onboarding and hiring new people. So Sarah, I've seen people starting at Citrix in 2020. What have we learned about kind of hiring and onboarding in this kind of remote world?
Absolutely. And it's a huge challenge. So, the hiring process within Citrix is so key. Our talent and the quality of our talent is everything. So just within EMEA, we've hired almost 350 new people in the last year. So that's a very big number out of, 1,500 employees. That's a lot. And obviously we need to continue to hire and retain the best people in tech. It's well known that it's a big challenge. I'm sure a lot of people can identify with that. And so I think the big takeaway for me is that we need to do two things really well. So we need to be excellent at two things. One is the efficiency of our processes, and the consistency of our processes. So our incoming candidates and new hires need to see and feel the same processes everywhere at the same time. So whether you are applying for a role in Asia, in France, in the UK, in the United States, you need to see and feel the same experience wherever you are at any time. And that's be able to identify with a great new opportunity, and be able to live and breathe that role and for it to be attractive to you, and then for that experience to continue on throughout the process. So it's that consistency of experience, the efficiency of the process, being able to get through all of that very easily and for it to be a great experience. And then the other part that we need to do equally well is we need to stand out from other employers. So we need to demonstrate our company culture, what's different about us versus anybody else, and to really, for that to shine through. And I think for that to happen, we need to be very personal and personalize the experience. And those two things, so the efficiency and the consistency of the process and personalizing it, may sound quite contradictory, but they're actually not. So it needs to be smooth, but also personal. So it means that our recruiters and also our managers need to really invest a lot more time in the hiring process and in the onboarding experience than they would have prior to COVID and to the pandemic. So what we ask our people to do is to really spend more time, invest more time, and that includes our hiring managers too, because candidates need to take more time to make their decision and to make the right decision for them. And likewise, to take an example from the onboarding experience, for somebody to feel that they're really part of an organization quickly within the first few months, they need to feel part of something, part of a culture, part of a team, and not just that if they got a better offer within the first few weeks in a new company, that they wouldn't be just changing their badge and their laptop to go somewhere else. And that's the risk if they don't feel fully integrated. So it's those two things, I think, that really need to shine through. And that's easier said than done, especially when you need to transform all of those processes from something that was maybe very heavily on-site and in person to a remote experience. So those are my big takeaways.
Yeah, quite a big change then, I think, for new starters and bringing people on board. And so we want to perhaps take a look at existing employees as well. So we've talked a bit about what the challenges are for bringing new people in. What about existing employees? Have you noticed any changes in the kinds of things that they have maybe needed during this time?
Yes, absolutely. And I think the themes are similar. I think what's been interesting about this period, obviously, is that we haven't known how long, if you like, the crisis has meant to last. So, and a short period of crisis is not the same experience as an ongoing period of uncertainty. So back in March, we thought we were going to be in this situation for 2-3 months, and of course, it's now coming up to a year. So I think that the staying close to people is a really big part of the new set of competencies that we all need to learn and invest time in. So I think those competencies are around how to manage remote teams. It's not the same as managing an on-site team. I think navigating ambiguity is a big competency that we don't necessarily have innately, whether that's HR teams or managerial teams. That needs to be sometimes learnt and finessed or nurtured. And then organizational agility. How do you connect people into other parts of the organization? How do we do that with our clients, connect them with other parts of their organizations and build that skill when it's all remote? It's different to when everybody is able to meet up in international groups, international meetings. These are different skills that were already relevant, but I think have become, much more relevant and much more to the fore. So It's about building courses, building skills, building networks. And then I think around how we retain our top talent and how we support them, I think is different too. So, it's in the, you mentioned it when we were keying up this discussion, but supporting mental health and making sure that our employees are supported in their new daily lives, which for all of us are much more challenging. And to take a couple of examples around employee well-being, and building resilience. A couple of examples from Citrix. We're building out a lot more programs and support, and company-funded support and benefits to help our employees with things like company-funded counselling, parent and child support, mentoring programs, recognising that these times are extremely challenging for us all as individuals. And that's whether those individuals are employees, managers, leaders, that it's difficult to get the balance right at the moment for us all. And these are things that we need to pay a lot more attention to than we ever did before in the past.
Very good. Okay. Some big changes there for sure. One of the things that I've also been reading about is these kind of discussions on productivity as well. And I think a lot of the work seems to suggest that productivity is at least as good in this setting, if not better in some cases. But how are we measuring that? If 9 to 5 working isn't the measure anymore for productivity, how are we really measuring employees? What sort of things are we looking at?
It's a great question. I would say, actually, personally, I believe that the way we measure productivity should always actually be on output rather than input. And I think that this is a time when this is even more relevant. So output and results should always be the right way of measuring productivity, and much less so input. So it's not about time or effort. It's about, the results that you produce. Again, we're very privileged at Citrix to be a very successful organisation. We've had one of our, best years, certainly in EMEA, where we've, produced fantastic results just this past year. And, we certainly don't have issues with productivity. I think the issues are more around how do we innovate. This is not, anything, a big scoop, but I think that the questions are more around maintaining productivity, maintaining the quality of our innovation, and how we come together to be creative and not just productive. And I think that's going to be the ongoing discussion. And I'd be interested actually to hear from you, John, about what you were hearing in your client discussions about, the way forward, since we're talking about, productivity, innovation. Are these discussions that are coming up when we're talking about, the future of work and how we're going to work? Are these themes that you're hearing also?
Well, absolutely, yes. So I think if I was to think about how the discussions we've been having with our customers over the last year, I think I'd probably put them into 3 categories. So I think the way people are thinking about work, the kinds of work that's being done, and what work we are doing. The second thing is, I guess, around the sort of nature of the workforce. Who's going to be in it? Where are they located, for example? And then the third area is kind of the workplace. So, how is that going to change? Is it going to change for different roles, for example? So these are kind of some of the sort of themes that I think we're seeing. So, for example, there's been quite a discussion on repurposing office space. So one of the discussions I've had with one particular customer is if office space is best for collaboration, to the point you just made, then do we need to create more collaborative space in offices and less, let's say, for hot desking, for example? So, when people are working on tasks, they do those kinds of things at home or in a remote setting, and they only really come into the office to do more collaborative, creative type work. and so the office needs to be kind of reformatted for that. So that's one sort of theme that I've seen. We've had particular discussions with our banking customers as well, and they have obviously a very diverse workforce as we have, and whilst many of their employees have been pretty comfortable with home working, some of their younger employees really struggle with this because the sort of environment they're in at home isn't really suited to home working. They're in perhaps shared accommodation or sort of small flats or whatever, so a bit more challenging for them. So what the banks have been doing have been opening up their sort of branches as kind of remote working hubs for their own employees to use. Now, they were already doing a bit of this before COVID, but that's really accelerated during this time. So using branches as sort of local co-working locations. The kind of other comment that I'd make is that there are some real positives that have come out of this. So one customer talked about the democratic effects of things like Zoom calls. So if you think about where we were previously, if you were on a call with multiple colleagues, some might be in the office with you, some would be in other office locations, maybe some would be kind of dialing in from home. There's no doubt that if you were in the primary office location, then you had a sort of advantage on that call. So you could control the call. There were often side discussions that you would have with other people that were in the room that maybe people couldn't really take part in, that were dialing in remotely. You can read the body language, the facial expressions more easily, all of this kind of stuff. So that was the world before COVID. But of course, with everybody working remotely, we're all on cameras, we're all away from each other, and actually we're all in the same position. And so there's, it's more of a democratic sort of view. So, there is no disadvantage to being remote because we're all remote. And the discussion then was, so how do we maintain that going forward? So things like camera etiquette, using cameras all the time now, whereas perhaps before that might not have been the case, I think is a good thing. And some of the tools that we've started to use to replace sort of whiteboards in meeting rooms. So at Citrix we use Miro, for example, as a really good sort of whiteboarding tool. Maybe we need to make these available going forward so that people can continue to really be involved in creative discussions even when they're remote. So I think there's been some very interesting sort of developments. I think the last point I'd make is also there's been a great tie-in between some of the benefits of remote working and other issues such as, for example, sustainability agendas. And I think some organisations are starting to see some benefits in terms of reaching their own goals on sustainability, and actually how can they maintain that going forward as well. So definitely some positives and some quite creative thinking about how we can kind of do this going forward. So I think a positive view. So Sarah, I'm conscious that we're coming to the end of our time here, so wanted to kind of draw this to a close. So thank you so much for your contributions, some very insightful comments there, and I really appreciate you joining us for the time. And I also just want to thank the audience for joining us too, just to listen to this discussion. So thank you everybody for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. Thank you everybody on the call.